No, it's good. Hi, everyone. Wow. John brought this beautiful setup, which is just lovely. Liz, I forgot to tell you, I really think we should buy one of these. Like, isn't this nice? Right, okay. I'll do the paperwork. Hi, everyone. I think I've spoken to all of you, and I know most of you. My name is Morgan Bengal. I am the curator here at Old Newgate. Thank you so much for joining us. We host a lot of events here at the museum. Our single-day mineral show will bring in over 500 people, and those are very exciting and fun. But these moments right here with a very intimate audience is what brings significance to the life of our museum. And I am so appreciative that you are here to do that with us today, to commemorate Prince Mortimer and celebrate our inclusion into the Connecticut Freedom Trail. So thank you. We are commemorating Prince Mortimer, and I wanted to give you an introduction to him for those of you who may not know him or know him as well as we have been getting to know him. And the best way I thought I could do that was to share the text panel that will be on the sign that will be set up right there after we unveil it. So this will be the introduction that our visitors will also receive when they come to the site. This site commemorates the life of Prince Mortimer, also referred to as Prince Negro or Old Guinea, whose given name is unknown. As a boy, Prince was captured on the coast of Guinea and brought to the Connecticut colony. Prince was purchased by Philip Mortimer of Middletown, who owned a rope walk where Prince would work for many years making rope for ships. During the American Revolution, Prince is said to have been a servant to many officers and even sent on errands by General George Washington. Philip Mortimer died in 1794, and his will stated that Prince and the other enslaved people of the household were to be freed. However, Philip's daughter Anne and her husband George Starr contested the will and had it overturned. Instead of gaining his freedom, Prince was now enslaved to George Starr. In 1811, George Starr accused Prince Mortimer of attempting to poison him by placing arsenic in his morning chocolate. Now 87 years old, Prince was convicted of attempted murder and sentenced to Newgate for life. When Newgate closed in 1827, Prince and his fellow incarcerated men and women were moved to a new prison in Wethersfield. On March 11, 1834, Prince died in prison at the age of 110. We let that one sit in for a second. As a result, this is the text panel continued. As a result of Prince Mortimer's story, Old Newgate Prison and Coppermine is recognized as a stop on the Connecticut Freedom Trail, urging us to ask, what is freedom? Specifically, what was freedom to a man who was captured as a boy, enslaved, or incarcerated for the duration of his resiliently long life? Prince Mortimer lived and served during the American Revolution, yet the systems of the time legally enslaved him, denied his promised freedom, and inhumanely incarcerated him. Prince's story reminds us to think critically about our systems today, encouraging empathy and ultimately supporting humanity. So that's the intro visitors will get when they arrive on site to Prince. Thank you. And I also, before I hand the mic over, wanted to give a shout out to some of the people who have put Prince on the map. Dennis Karen is here with us today. And he literally wrote the book on Prince, A Century in Captivity. Because of this book, we have been able to incorporate his story into the museum's interpretation. Because we have been able to include it and has been very impactful to us, our tour guides, Lois in the back there specifically, incorporated Prince's story on one of her tours on a fateful day, and little did she know that John Mills was on said tour. This sparked a beautiful partnership, and John Mills' continued research as a result of Dennis's book has resurrected Prince's story here at the museum, and we are so grateful. John Mills, the founder of Alex Brand Corporation, has been doing incredible work. I'm sure most of you know and have seen him. He is just making waves across Connecticut. And we are so indebted to his valuable contribution to history and the modern connections he's been able to make. I want to bring John up here to share his reflections and significance about Prince's story.
Well, that's an incredibly generous introduction, Maureen. Because there were a lot of people who did a lot of work in kind of uncovering the story of Prince long before, I came along. There was a book in 1844 that talked about Prince Mortimer's life in a couple small chapters, but it did mention him. And then, what would that be? Some 160 some odd years later, Dennis Cairn came along and really dug into it in much more detail. And a lot of research was done by Dennis in discovering the court case, who the players were, what their role was in Middletown as it related to city government and religion. And I first saw the 1844 book, but then immediately searched and found Dennis's book from 2006, which I found incredibly fascinating and enthralling for a few reasons, but primarily because there really wasn't anything about Prince that aligned to like historical contexts around exceptionalism in a colonial society, right? It was the common enslaved story, and a person that endured and survived and persisted and waited and operated within the system. And in the end, there isn't some glowing success. He goes to prison, and then he gets shipped to another prison, and in that second prison, the warden was corrupt, and he was fed inappropriately, and he was constantly in the prison hospital, and simply because he's being fed bad food, and eventually he passes away. I think historically we would, people would say, well, why do you want to keep regurgitating that story? There isn't anything relative to it that's feel good. But to me, there is. Back in 2003, I traveled from San Diego, where I was living at the time, to East Texas, a small town in East Texas, where my second great-grandfather was buried, and his wife, Eliza, my great-grandparents, and to see what the site looked like. And in doing so, I had to walk past this whites-only cemetery that was still really well preserved and really well maintained. And I had to walk into the woods behind it to start to find my ancestors under downed trees and leaves. And so it was a clear vision of value, even current day. Like, I'm looking at what their value is now to our society, and clearly what it was then, to have them buried behind a whites-only cemetery in the woods. And I had many other experiences like that. On my mother's side, I went to Baltimore and discovered an African-American cemetery where my third great-grandfather on my mother's side, he was a Civil War veteran. He was buried in an African-American cemetery that had been paved over for a parking lot. And so I continually found these lines, but it gave me a sense of reverence for the people that survived and persisted and procreated and made it so that I can sit here and talk to you today. They now, to me, were the exceptionalists. Like, I didn't need them to have conquered a land or have owned land or to have a college degree or to have money. I didn't need them to have all that. All I needed was to know the story of what they had to endure and that they survived long enough to make it so that I exist. Like, that's all I needed. And so that's the story. Those are the types of stories I tell now, and I try to work to get that concept more readily understood so that, children like me, growing up, I felt like I had nothing with regards to history to be proud of. But if you're able to turn, as you should, people like a Prince Mortimer into the exceptionalists for their endurance, then you can have young black kids like I was in the 70s proud of who they are. So I work towards that, not just the exceptionalist story that's common to colonial America, but the exceptionalist story from a perspective of endurance. And finding this story through Dennis Caron's book gave me another individual to look at in that way. Like, you hear his story, Morgan told it eloquently about, coming from Africa and then from Guinea, and then eventually being enslaved in Middletown to Philip Mortimer, who owned a rope walk, and he worked there for many years and served in the Revolution, wasn't freed, and then the will was supposed to free him, but it doesn't free him. He gets enslaved now to Philip Mortimer's son-in-law, and then he's 87 years old, and then Philip Mortimer's son-in-law claims he put arsenic in his morning chocolate, and Prince is sent here to Newgate, nearly 90 years old. A lifetime of work and waiting, right? That to me, there's a strength in all of that, and there's a strength in the story, especially given that the people that he was enslaved to were the power brokers of Middletown. Like, they were the initiators of the church in Middletown. They were a part of local government. It's just a story that I think is well worth telling. And just to add one last thing on top of it, this is an amazing event to ensure that we kind of honor that endurance. But we're also doing that in other places around the state, and you'll learn more of that, I'm sure, in the coming months. There are other places where we're getting an honorary street name aligned to Prince in Middletown. And so there are other things that are going to occur, but this is the beginning, having his story on a panel here on the grounds where he actually walked. So with that, thank you all for coming. Thank you.
Just really quick. You're so tall. The reason we are out here, one, it's beautiful. Is this not a beautiful day? Out here in the shade. But the reason why we're out here, the reason why this sign will be placed out here is, one, we see 11,000 visitors from May to October. This will have the chance to impact these people. But we see thousands more after hours, off season, who take advantage of our picnic area, our sunsets. We get prom pictures that are taken here, wedding pictures. So this has the opportunity to reach all of those people. But more than all of that, this places Prince outside of the walls, which is very important to us, that his commemoration is outside of the prison walls for as long as this sign stays, and then we'll re-put it up when it starts to rot, right? So that was important to us. Okay. We also have a lovely quote on here from John and his contribution to Prince's story. So this is our sign. It will be drilled in after this event. I would like to now turn it over to Tammy Denise, the outreach coordinator for the Connecticut Freedom Trail. This sign is important, but all of this was spearheaded by our inclusion in the Connecticut Freedom Trail, and she can speak to that more than I can.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. As the outreach director for the Connecticut Freedom Trail, it is my job to go into the community to educate everyone about the Freedom Trail. The Freedom Trail was established in 1995 legally by the General Assembly, opened in September of 1996 with 60 towns, 30 sites, and now we are up to 170 plus in 70 towns. The Freedom Trail covers all of Connecticut. It is not just locally. So it is wonderful to be able to add this story that has been hidden but brought to life, and it's adding much more richness to the Black narratives that is a part of the Connecticut Freedom Trail. The Freedom Trail was created so that the Black narrative story could be told, to be honored of those whose stories have been left out. So as I'm out in the community, or if you want to reach out to me by email or phone and you know of any historical homes that you think should be on the site, please feel free to reach out to me. We'll go out and investigate, and if it meets the criteria, it will will also be added to the Connecticut Freedom Trail to further the stories. One like thing that I like to brag about, Boston has a 2.5 mile trail. Ours is the whole state from top to bottom, side to side. So thank y'all so much for coming out.
And I now invite Tammy Zawistowski, our representative, to the stage. She's going to share her reflections. She is a longtime advocate for Newgate and preservation and history at large. Tammy.
Thank you, Morgan. Until a couple of weeks ago, I had no idea what Prince Mortimer's story was, and I want to thank John and also Dennis for bringing it forward. To me, it's an incredible story of human dignity in the face of adversity. I think it's hugely important that we're able to preserve his story. Story really is such an important component of historical preservation. You could say that historical preservation really depends on story. Look at Newgate Prison. You can if you take it without story, you could admire the brickwork, you could admire the stonework, you could admire the view, you could admire it as a piece of property. But without the stories of the prisoners, without the stories of the miners who dug the initial mine, without the stories of the prison keeper and the guards, all it is a building. So this is just an additional way of being able to provide context for this particular property. Context is huge in trying to create the preservation of any particular property. It's whether you have old documents, objects, anything like that. It adds to those stories, and I'm so happy that the time was taken and the care was taken in putting together that story for us to be able to use at this property. I want to also thank the Connecticut Freedom Trail group because this is a very important site at this point. And I know that Prince Mortimer was not the only African-American prisoner here, and I hope we'll be able to get more of the other stories as well. And I also want to introduce Todd Levine with SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office. Todd's been with SHPO since 2013, isn't it? And has a long history in historical and architectural preservation particularly. So I just want to welcome him up here. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. The Connecticut Freedom Trail documents and designates sites that embody the struggle for freedom and human dignity and celebrate African American communities. And we have 4 categories in the Connecticut Freedom Trail. One is the story of the Amistad. This is one of the most pivotal moments in American and even international history as an abolition movement, and it happened here in Connecticut. Our second category is the Underground Railroad. For instance, Farmington, Connecticut is called Grand Central Station for the Underground Railroad, and the Farmington River on its way north to Canada, where it was illegal to be a slave, was a path taken, and tributaries went right through East Granby on that trail. Our third category is the Civil Rights Movement, and we're now partnered with the town of Simsbury to preserve a tobacco shed that was in the tobacco fields that Martin Luther King Jr. worked in the 1950s. And then our fourth category is a category of the concepts of freedom, which is the stories of African American men and women who did the impossible, overcame impossible odds. And that's where this story will reside, in that category. And actually, it will reside as a trail within a trail, because we'll have multiple sites that tell the story of Prince Mortimer, including this site, Wethersfield, where he was transferred and he died at the Wethersfield prison. Middletown, as John had mentioned, we actually are in negotiations to have a Prince Mortimer mural on the side of the building in which he worked at, or the site in which the building was at he worked at. And then, of course, where John, through his hard work, is getting an honorary name in Middletown of Prince Mortimer, our little trail within a trail. The stories of the concepts of freedom stories are usually inspirational, but this one is a little more complex. It's inspirational, but it's a hard story to tell, and it's important as historians that we tell all facets of the story. There is not just the good side we want to tell. All facets of history needs to be told for all of us so that we can grow and learn and be better. So with that, though, I'd like to bring Tammy up. I think we're going to present to Morgan officially the plaque for the Connecticut Freedom Trail. And the flag as well.
You're going to get your bigger flag.
Yeah, we're in the process, Liz, of ordering bigger flags. Just so you know.
So that you can really be seen.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, again for joining us. A couple closing remarks, just that our museum is open. If anybody, I know some people have come and have not been, or has been a while. If anybody wanted to take a mind tour or just explore the grounds, you are welcome to. If you head into the visitor center, there's also restrooms in there. Head in there and talk to the front desk attendant. Luke will be at the desk, and he can give you tickets for the next tour if anybody wanted to go down. But take your time, please enjoy. It's a beautiful day, and thank you all again so much for being here. Thank you, guys. Yeah, right.
Some publicity shots. Nice work.
Yeah. Thanks for making it happen.
Yeah.
I'll be right back.
John, come stand by me.
Okay. Well, let me give this to Eric.
I get lost around the corner, so that's why
Well, let me take off my glasses. I don't look too smart.